Bobbitt.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for Finance Committee. Development assistance involving public infrastructure improvements or the extension of utility services that are directly related to an economic development project, and that this executive session is necessary to protect the interest of the applicant or the possible investment or expenditure of public funds to be made in connection with this economic development project pursuant to the Ohio Revised Section 121.22G8. The executive session, excuse me, should include the following: Finance Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, Council President, all council members, Law Director, Mayor, Auditor, Service Safety Director, Treasurer, City Engineer, Wastewater Superintendent, Stormwater Director, and LPA Economic Development Director.
Can I get a second?
Second.
And Mrs. Bobbitt, need a roll call vote. Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
And I vote yes, we are in executive session. I think it'd be better if I can find a way to put appurtenances in that long.
That's not yours from last time.
6:38, we are back in the regular order of business. The first item I have on, the second item I have on tonight's agenda is Resolution 5921. That's a resolution authorizing the mayor to apply to participate in the Ohio EPA Water Supply Revolving Loan Account Program and to execute documents as required. This is coming through water pollution. Mr. James?
Yes, I would like to invite Stephen Wellstead to the podium to give us a little more explanation on this, if you would, please.
Yes, thanks, Tom. Good morning, evening, everybody. Sorry. So this legislation here deals with the North Water Treatment Plant Replacement Project there in Miller Park. There's been previous legislation that has gone before you in previous months, and of course Denise gave that presentation a couple of council meetings ago to give everybody a little more information on that project. This project, of course, and as Denise mentioned previously, we're expecting the total cost will be over $40 million between both design and construction of this project. So to finance it, our plan is to utilize this WSRLA program through Ohio EPA. And this resolution will allow us to submit the loan applications and then execute any contracts that are required for that program. Right now, our plan is to submit an application for the design loan here in the coming weeks, with the hope that we'll get that loan awarded in September. And then an application for the construction loan we submitted next year in March, and with an expected loan award date in August of 2022. And I think that's all I have right now that I wanted to address. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them for you, though.
Any questions for Mr. Wellstead? Mr. James, who's your second and your,
We're looking at 2 readings, and Mr. Orman Hall will be my second.
very good, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. 2 readings.
Thank you.
On 5921. Next item I have on tonight's agenda is Resolution 6021. That's a resolution to increase the CDBG budget to accept CARES Act grant funding and to approve a then and now certificate. This is coming through Economic Development. Mr. McDaniel?
Yeah, this is just annual CDBG budgeting that we have to do prior to expending the money for 2021.
Well, I think that's CARES Act.
Yeah.
Oh, the CARES Act portion of the CDBG, yes, you're correct.
Okay.
But before we can actually encumber and spend any of this money, we have to pass the legislation.
We have to get it and appropriate, right?
Correct.
Gotcha. Questions for Mr. McDaniel? What's your timing?
Let me check, I think this is money that we can spend. I think we're doing 1 reading on that.
All right. Sold.
And I think, Mr. Stoughton, I think we're going to ask you to sponsor that and have
All
this.
right. I'm in. So we will suspend on 6021 this evening. Next item I have is Resolution 6121. That's a resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise for qualifications for a construction manager at risk and submit requests for proposal for capital improvements to City Hall. This is coming through the Law Committee. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, this is a fairly specialized kind of contract, so we want to basically find out who's out there that can do this type of work, and then we'll bid it. It has to do with the city building. There are some repairs that have been deferred because of financial issues, and it feels like this is a good time to get it done. But I'm going to ask the safety director maybe to say an additional word or two. Paul?
Yes, this is a construction manager at risk is somebody who represents us completely in our interest and our protection for this project. I've already had some preliminary work done. 5 years ago, we spent some time truly evaluating City Hall from everything you can imagine that was visible. And then I just recently had that updated with current trends, fees, costs, supplies, and everything like this. Nothing is set in stone, but we're looking at possibly just for the City Hall component at maybe a 5.5 million. Now that could be plus or minus, depending on what we do as we go forward. That's one of the things this construction manager at risk would do. Help us evaluate it, pull my team in, we'll sit there and figure out. After we, of course, we're going to be engaged quite a bit with Auditor Nettles and Treasurer Wolfinger, and we are not even ready for that to figure out the financing part of this. This does not put us on a time frame for that, but this is something that we do need to get done. I know that in our campaign that we had for our tax levy, this was mentioned many times as one of the projects that needs to get done. So I'm just wanting to move forward with this. We would then enter into negotiations. If we figure one of these, we would meet with maybe the top 2 or 3, depending on how many are submitted. We would look over those, select, and then we'd enter into a negotiation of what that cost would be to this project. There are still some unhidden things in City Hall as you move forward with a project. You uncover things. You know, we have some things in mind, but we need representation. It's too much of a tall task for me to do a project like this. That would probably be about a year. So we were asking for this, and we would get him involved with the project, and then come back with more of a time frame. Because if we can't fund this completely with cash, we'd have to look at financing. So I also would like to include a small component of the annex building to this project, because there is some, you know, we did major improvements through the course of years, but that's something that would be evaluated and see if that's something we can include in this project. But that's all to be determined once we make a selection here.
Questions for Mr. Martin? Yes, Mrs. Bobbitt.
Did you say that you had something updated? And was this something, was this the work that Schneider had done for us?
Not Schneider. You mean, so I had several professionals evaluate the meeting, you know.
Maybe
from-
they just did windows and
Right, I had
and energy.
multiple
Maybe they
companies.
were just energy.
Yeah, there would be multiple companies. I mean, from mechanical, electrical, plumbing to roof to tuck pointing, which is a
Okay.
big deal because we have the envelope of the building is in jeopardy. And before we can do anything on the inside, we'd have to deal with the outside. And definitely the roof up there, people don't realize there's a flat portion of that roof up there behind the tower. It would include improvements to the bell and to the tower, to the clock, you know, as much as we need to do this. But the funding is a big deal, so I'm not ready for that. But we would be bringing in Auditor Nettles and Treasurer Wolfinger to help us with that. And this would probably be most likely a bonded project. So we would do some possible temporary, maybe some notes or something in the meantime, and then go out to the market. There's some of the options we're looking at. But that's where Treasurer Wolfinger and Auditor Nettles helps us with that.
Further questions? I'm gonna make one comment. When you start talking about $5.5 million, and you all know the cost overrun of 1.8 we had in the Columbian, you're talking about some real money there, and one of the things that might, sure should be under consideration on the table is a different, or a new city hall building, and maybe taking that one private somehow and restoring it back to its old, you know, its old luster to what it was. So I'm just throwing that out there because you know there's gonna be cost overruns. You just know it, because to your point, you said, you know, there are things you still don't know about that building.
Yeah,
that-
the biggest thing, it's really structurally a very sound building, but there's some elements of the tower that we could not get into and evaluate. There are some parts about it.
Sure.
But you're right, Mr. Stoughton, there is that possibility. We got too
Yeah.
much experience to know that.
Yeah, it's not for a debate tonight. I just want to throw it out there as a curveball, but certainly you did, this was a part of the levy discussion, and certainly, and I know you and it even predates Mayor Scheffler, have been working on trying to get your collective arms around, hey, how can we fix, you know, the 10 most pressing things, right?
Yes.
Or 20 or 200 or whatever they are. What's your timing on this, Mr. Hall?
3, please.
And your second, please?
Second would be Mr. McCain.
All right, so we'll go 3 readings on 6121. Next item I have is 6221. And this is a resolution to increase the city budget to accept and appropriate $6.3 million into the local fiscal recovery fund 2052, and then distribute to the appropriate city budgets per the resolution. Auditor Nettles, who is not going to be here tonight, basically kind of pre-briefed us on this 2 weeks ago. So this is just really appropriating the money that we get and then basically distributing it per guidance. I'm going to ask for suspension on this tonight. Are there any questions on this piece? Seeing none. Mrs. Kreitz, will you please second this?
Yes.
All right, so we will ask for suspension on 6221. Are there any departmental updates this evening? There's not that many of you out there. See no one race to the podium to get some FaceTime on TV. That's a good thing. So with that, I will defer to President Pro Tem, or President for the evening, Mr. McDaniel, for tonight's meeting prep.
We have two items on tonight's meeting prep. The first one, temporary resolution 6321, a resolution authorizing the mayor to serve on the Ohio Public Works Commission District 17 Integrating Committee. Mr. Hall.
Yeah, this is a bit of a surprise. The mayor has historically served on committees of the Public Works Commission. We didn't know that this was going to require council action, but it does. This particular position will allow the mayor to basically participate in discussions about projects that are going to be funded throughout the state. It's pretty important, and we're going to ask for suspension.
And your second, Mrs.
My second would be Ms. Tina.
Mrs. Teener. The second item is temporary ordinance 1521, an ordinance to expand the current designated outdoor refreshment area, Chapter 705, Lancaster City Ordinance. Mr. Hall.
It is as cold as it's been. We're headed towards spring. It looks like we're opening up, and the downtown business district has some plans that they'd like to expand the area somewhat. We're still going to be well within the state's designated sort of, not territory, but the amount of room that we can have. If we don't do this, then there will be some businesses that won't be able to participate in the outdoor refreshment area. We're going to revise the district. Paul or Mayor, is there anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I would just say this is the 5-year renewal. This provision has to be renewed every 5 years, and it just coincidentally is this year. Also, the state changed the name from an outdoor refreshment area to a designated outdoor refreshment area. So you'll see in the ordinance that there's lots of red markings inserting the word designated. So it's a renewal. It's changing some of the language, and it's adding a few blocks of area to the DORA at this point.
Mr. Hall, your pleasure.
3, please.
3 reasons. And your second? Oh, I'm sorry. Nope. I'm sorry, Mr.
Look
Stoughton.
both ways.
Yes.
Just up and look at
I'm a
your seat
rookie.
over there.
I'm a rookie at this.
You'll be fine. Interestingly enough, Marietta just made a big deal about, they just passed around, what's it called, a DORA?
Designated area.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Designated.
Well, the DORA for short, but they made a big deal in the fact that they just passed there. They're all excited.
I think Amanda has.
So that's all I need.
Thank you.
Most cities in Central Ohio have a DORA at this point. I think we were one of the first ones 5 years ago, and pretty much every community around Columbus and near us have a DORA, except Canal Winchester for some reason. Interesting.
So also, I think our current one goes to the end of June. As we look at it, so we're asking for 3 readings because I think it'll coincide with renewing it out. Currently, right now, in my office, I give them temporary ones. This would give me the authority to make it a permanent thing as we have events come before us.
Any other questions? All right, Mr. Stoughton, back to you.
Thank you. Any other items for finance? Seeing none. Mrs. Bobbitt?
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
Second.
And we have a second. It is 6:52, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Regular meeting of council will start at 6:58. About 5 minutes.
So if you gotta go, go.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Dagger Law has been part of the Lancaster community for more than 110 years. This is where we live and work. You'll see us at festivals, sporting events, and all around town. We consider our clients as friends, and we walk alongside you through challenging times. Whether you're a growing business, a changing family, facing litigation, planning your future, or dealing with land issues, we're right here. We are local. We are trusted. We are experienced. Dagger Law.
There is no place like Lancaster, Ohio, and Fairfield County, and like you, I am proud to call them home. As a longtime resident of Lancaster and graduate of Lancaster High School, this community is important to me, and I want to provide superior customer service, professionalism, integrity, and honesty at the Connor Insurance Agency. I am committed to supporting local programs and projects through my volunteer work and board membership with several organizations. It has been a great honor to work with all the first responders throughout Lancaster, Fairfield County, and the state of Ohio to put on Kids and Cops Day, to be a part of Shop with a Cop alongside the Lancaster Police Department and JFS, and to help Lancaster Public Education Foundation raise funds to support our local public schools and teachers. These men and women work hard to protect and support our community, and I would like to take this moment to say thank you for all they do. My goal as a business owner and insurance agent is to provide my clients with the most appropriate services and coverage for their needs at a competitive rate. As an independent agent, I have several carriers to choose from so I can customize your insurance coverage to fit your needs and desires. I strive to make sure there are no gaps in your coverage that could be harmful, and just as important, that you are not overinsured. I look forward to serving your insurance needs now and in the future. At Connor Insurance, we are here to serve you by protecting what is important to you. Please contact my office at 740-654-2848 for a full list of services and carriers, or visit my website, ConnorInsuranceAgency.com.
The Frankie Smith Funeral Home and Crematory in Lancaster and the Johnson Smith Funeral Home in Baltimore have a long and wonderful history of serving our community. Feel free to give us a call at 740-653-0652. Stop in and see us at either of our two locations, 405 North Columbus Street in Lancaster and 207 South Main Street in Baltimore. Respect for tradition, regard for change.
City Council, please join me in a word of prayer. Father, we come to you this hour asking for your blessing and help as we are gathered. We pray for your guidance in the matters at hand and ask that you would clearly show us how to conduct our work in the best interest of the city and its residents. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
I hereby call this meeting of the Lancaster City Council to order. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Here.
Mrs. Kreitz. Here. Mr. Hall.
Here.
Mr. James.
Here.
Mr. Matlin.
Here.
Mr. McDaniel.
Here.
Mr. Schoonover.
Here.
Mr. Stoughton.
Here.
And Mrs. Teener. Here.
Please let the record reflect that 9 of the 9 council members are present. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to excuse Council President Uhl this evening, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to excuse President Uhl from tonight's meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Reading and disposing of the journal.
I'd like to present the regular meeting minutes dated April 26, 2021.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the journal.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the journal. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Reports from city officials.
Letter dated May 7th, 2021, regarding application to create a designated outdoor refreshment area submitted by Mayor David Scheffler. Email dated May 10th, 2021, regarding Finance Committee agenda submitted by Mr. Stoughton. And finally, an email dated May 10th, 2021, regarding will we miss President Uhl this evening, submitted by Mr. Stoughton.
We'll find that out.
It's part of in the record, right?
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of city officials.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file, receive and file the reports of city officials. Thank you, Mr. Stoughton, for the
You're
comedy. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any communications?
We have 3. Letter dated April 20th, 2021, regarding the notice to the legislative authorities, opportunity for objections to renewal of liquor permits submitted by the Ohio Department of Commerce, Division of Liquor Control. TNR Properties invitation to the grand opening ceremony of the Flats on Memorial Drive. And finally, a notice to appeal received April 30th, 2021, submitted by Elizabeth Huffman, 1580 Woodland Heights Lane, Lancaster, Ohio.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the communications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file communications. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any special presentations?
There are none to be presented.
Do we have any petitions and memorials?
There are none scheduled.
During this time, we set aside time to allow voters and taxpayers of the city to address council on any item or issue they would like. If you're interested in addressing Lancaster City Council, please come to the podium, sign in with your name and address, and state the same for the record. Please note that members of council will not respond to you during this time, but may choose to do so at a later time during the meeting. In accordance with the rules of council, we ask that you limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Is there anyone who would like to address Lancaster City Council at this time? Anyone who would like to address City Council? In that case, thank you all for being here. Reports of standing committees.
Finance Committee meeting minutes dated May 10th, 2021, submitted by Mr. Stoughton, and Safety Committee meeting minutes dated May 7th, 2021, submitted by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to receive and file the reports of standing committees.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to receive and file the reports of standing committees. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Do we have any reports of special committees?
There are none to be presented.
There are no public hearings for this evening. We will begin with the reading of resolutions. We have nothing for third reading. Resolution 5221.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an engineering agreement for the Western Water Transmission Main Project, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. James.
Yes, thank you, Pro Tem President McDaniel. At this time, I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of temporary resolution 52-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third the third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 52-21. Mr. James.
No further discussion, but at this point in time, Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon our written record resolution temporarily numbered 52-20.
We have to go back to the suspension first.
I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
That's okay.
No further discussion.
Any other discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. James.
Now I can present a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon our written record temporary resolution numbered 52-21.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 52-21. Mr. James.
Yes, just as a quick reminder, this is about a $150,000 contract to look at the design for water lines that will extend out to the industrial park. And this is something we had discussed back in the last meeting for Finance Committee, and that's all I got to say about that. And at this time, are we ready for a vote yet?
Now, we have anyone else with discussion
Any
on this motion to pass? Seeing none, we're ready to call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 52-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 57-21.
A resolution to approve an enterprise zone agreement with Blue Label Packaging Company, doing business as Blue Label Digital Printing and One Right Company, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Bobbitt.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the third reading of resolution temporary 57-21, please.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 57-21. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're asking for suspension tonight so this this new enterprise zone agreement for Blue Label Packaging can be actually be passed and on the record. There's been quite a bit of press about it on television and certainly in print media about the success that they're having. So we're very, very pleased to see companies in our community having this kind of success.
Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass and engross and enter upon the written record resolution temporary 57-21, please.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 57-21. Mr. Stoughton.
No further comments.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Resolution 57-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 59-21.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Environmental Protection Agency Water Supply Revolving Loan Account Program and to execute contracts as required, offered by Mr. James and seconded by Mr. Hall.
Mr. James.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. Actually, this was discussed at some length in our Finance Committee meeting, and this will be the first of two readings.
First of two readings for 59-21. 60-21.
A resolution to increase receipts appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the Community Development Block Grant Fund 2073 and approve a then and now certificate offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton. This is the one from Finance regarding the CARES Act.
Oh, I'm the primary sponsor?
You are, as I'm sitting in the president's seat tonight.
Okay. Well, I thought it was a second. That's why I messed up. Sure. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of Resolution Temporary 6221.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to we have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 60-21. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're asking for suspension tonight so we can appropriate the CARES Act federal grant funding monies and make them available effectively tomorrow, hence suspension.
Any other questions? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz. Yes. Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record Resolution Temporary 6021, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 60-21. Mr. Stoughton.
No thanks.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz. Yes. Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Resolution 60-21 passes 9-0. Temporary resolution 61-21.
A resolution authorizing the Service Safety Director to advertise a request for qualifications for construction manager at risk and submit requests for proposals for capital improvements to City Hall, offered by Mr. Hall, seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, this issue was discussed extensively in Finance, and we're going to go for 3 readings.
3 readings. First of 3 readings for 61-21. 62-21.
A resolution to increase receipts appropriate from the unencumbered balance and amend the certificate with the county auditor in the Local Fiscal Recovery Fund 2052, offered by Mr. Stoughton and seconded by Mrs. Kreitz.
Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of Resolution Temporary 6221, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 6221. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm asking for suspension this evening in anticipation of receiving this CARES Act funding, local fiscal recovery fund funding. Therefore, the accounts will be set up, the money will be appropriated, and it can be received and used immediately.
Further discussion on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz. Yes. Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record Resolution Temporary 6221, please.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 63-21. Mr. Stoughton.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing further.
Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt.
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz. Yes. Mr. Hall.
Yes.
Mr. James.
Yes.
Mr. Matlin.
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel.
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover.
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton.
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to pass, 63-21, 9-0. We have nothing for third reading in our ordinances, nothing for second reading. First reading,
Dawn, that was 63.
oh,
Pass
60, I'm
62.
sorry. Yes, I'm ahead of schedule here. Motion to pass 9-0 on 62-21, 63-21. Thank
A
you.
resolution authorizing the mayor to serve on the Ohio Public Works Commission District 17 Integrating Committee, offered by Mr. Hall, seconded by Mrs. Teener.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President. This particular committee is a relatively important committee. The mayor participates routinely on Public Works Commission committees, and we just recently became aware of the fact that he needed to be appointed by council to serve on this one. It is pretty important. The mayor is going to be participating in decisions around which projects that are going to be funded around the state, and because of some time urgency, we are asking the council to suspend the second and third readings tonight.
I entertain a motion to that.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion that council suspend its rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 63-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to suspend the rules and waive the second and third reading of resolution temporarily numbered 63-21. Mr. Hall, I believe you discussed this. Do you have any additional comments?
Nothing further.
Any comments on the motion to suspend? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel? Mr.
Yes.
Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Motion to suspend passes 9-0. Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, I would like to make a motion that council pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 63-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to pass, engross, and enter upon the written record resolution temporarily numbered 63-21. Mr. Hall,
Nothing further.
discussion on the motion to pass. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Bobbitt?
Yes.
Mrs. Kreitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. James?
Yes.
Mr. Matlin?
Yes.
Mr. McDaniel?
Yes.
Mr. Schoonover?
Yes.
Mr. Stoughton?
Yes.
And Mrs. Teener.
Yes.
Temporary resolution 63-21 passes 9-0. Now we will move to the reading of ordinances. First reading on 1521.
An ordinance of the City of Lancaster to expand the current designated outdoor refreshment area and repeal and replace existing Lancaster Codified Ordinance Part 7 Business Regulation Code, Chapter 705 Outdoor Refreshment Areas of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Lancaster and to declare an emergency, offered by Mr. Hall and seconded by Mr. McDaniel.
Mr. Hall.
Yes, Mr. President, we discussed this extensively in finance. I really don't have anything further to say. We're looking at 3 readings.
First of 3 readings on temporary ordinance 15-21. We have nothing on the table. Unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business for council? Seeing none.
I had my hand up too late.
Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't see you there. Go ahead,
Well,
please.
that's because I had it up too late, got it up too late.
After I turned away?
Just wanted to remind everyone that last council meeting, Assistant Chief Matlin came in, and we discussed the medic, and then we also discussed it thoroughly during our last safety committee meeting. I would like to, once administration is finished putting it together, I'd like to bring it in, and if we could, please suspend on that.
I thought we were going to get it tonight.
We didn't get it tonight because,
We're working on some financial arrangements, and
Right.
we've got to get financing arranged, so it wasn't prepared for the night. Otherwise, we would have had it here tonight. So.
thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bobbitt. Any other unfinished business? New business. I have one thing. This is Peace Officer Memorial Week for the United States. Locally, the Lancaster Police Department and the Fairfield County Sheriff's Office, along with the Highway Patrol and others, host an event downtown. Director, is that still scheduled for Friday at
Yes.
noon downtown in recognition of peace officers who have died in the line of duty?
I think it's Wednesday at 11:30.
Is it Wednesday?
Wednesday at 11:30.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's a change from tradition. I think it's always been Friday at noon. So that's good to know. For those who would like to attend, the date this year is Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. at the Square downtown. Do they have a rain-out location?
Yes, the mill.
The mill, should it rain, but still Wednesday at 11:30. So again, this entire week is Peace Officer Memorial Week. The stats last year were alarming for officers who died in the line of duty, well over 300. Many of those were COVID-19, as the officers were in homes, just like firefighters and paramedics were, with people who were ill, and many of them contracted and passed away as a result of the disease. So should you want to attend that ceremony, Wednesday at 11:30 a.m. So thank you. That's all I have on the new business. Any other new business?
Just one other thing. The banners, I started calling them flags, they're not flags. The banners look nice. What's the, tell us a little bit more about that.
So those banners are Remember the Fallen. Mrs. Moyer applied for and got a grant, actually through Destination Downtown Lancaster, because they needed a fiscal agent. Applied for and got a grant for those banners to be hung. They've been up for a week or two now, and they'll be up at least through the end of this week. So they look great. I don't know exactly how many of them there are, maybe 20 of them or so. There's a lot of them. Plus some of our fallen police officers have their own banner up also. And we'll point out that the lights in the tower of City Hall are blue, as is the clock face for this week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business?
Just to point
thank
out,
you.
I have one of our fine field training officers here tonight. Just the board was a little clear tonight, so he popped in as he's doing one of our new hires here, just give him a little training in here. He also had a second reason to be here, to make sure that one of the people in this room is doing a good job, as he observes. So we're grateful for Officer Sandy and appreciate the hire we made for our other officer here tonight.
Thank you, Officer Sandy, for being here, and welcome aboard. What's the new officer's last name?
Foreman.
Thank you.
Poorman. He's not poor tonight, but it's poor.
Foreman. Well, welcome aboard to the Lancaster Police Department. Announcement of our scheduled meetings.
Next regular meeting, May 24th. The meeting following is June 14th. Both meetings 6:30 p.m. here in council chambers. Upcoming committee meetings for the next 30 days. Water Pollution Control, May 12th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Law Committee, May 12th at 9:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Economic Development, May 20th at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall Conference Room, 1897. Finance, May 24th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers. Service, June 4th at 7:30 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. Code Enforcement, June 7th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room. And finally, the Water Pollution, June 9th at 8 a.m. at the City Hall 1897 Conference Room.
Thank you. Do we have any bills?
We have one, payable to MNCO for publication of legislation on our PNC card, $241.25.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to pay the bill.
I second that.
We have a motion and a second to pay the bills. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Do we have the need for an executive session? We do not. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn.
I second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
To sign the legislation.
Yes, please sign your legislation.
You're hired.
Yeah, well done, Don. I had to make up for our finance committee.
Oh, all right, with the dagger.
That's all right. You got-